Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. It's time to review A Quiet Place Part 2, directed by John Krasinski. The first one sort of became this horror thriller classic. We loved it for its innovative use of sound, for being very well acted, and just kind of a masterclass in suspense. And the second film is exactly the same way. Everything that was great about the first one, I think, is here. The beginning 10 minutes is some of the best, horror or thriller filmmaking that I've seen probably. The filmmaking style almost feels like Spielberg directed this, especially at the baseball field. When most of the horror and action is taking place, the camera is more focused on people's reactions and what is going on internally. It's very in tune with the characters throughout. And another thing that it carries forward really well from the first one is that the performances across the board are amazing. This is some of Emily Blunt's best work for sure, and it's the greatest opportunity I've seen for Cillian Murphy to shine here, and he is just truly fantastic. I hope that people will recognize him in this film and put him in more leading roles. I would love to see it. Yeah, I think the opening 10 minutes, like you were saying, was really an opportunity for John Krasinski to sort of flex those directorial muscles, and he really has chops here. This is not directed like an action film where it's trying to impress you with what's going on. It won't cut to a shot of the monster to just be like, look at the cool monster. It's always locked in with the characters and their perspective, and that's what makes it the hold your breath kind of thriller that it is. What I really like about this film as a sequel is that it focuses on new characters to try to flesh out and develop, and in this film it's mostly Millicent Simmons' character that gets that treatment. The way that her personality and her determination starts to come through is oh whoa, I didn't see that in the first one from this character at all. Noah Jupe gets a little bit of the same thing. Cillian Murphy was a really good character to introduce, and Emily Blunt, I think, was more the star of the show in the last film, but she's still really good here. The first film really focused on the theme of family and what it costs to protect them, sticking together, and also the anxiety, I guess, of the danger that your kids could be put in. And the second film, I think, continues that legacy. I don't know if it hit quite as hard on an emotional level with those themes, but it did bring them into the second one, and it wrapped them up in a really beautiful way. There are these moments that it hits at the ending where it becomes profound and beautiful, and that's what sets the A Quiet Place series apart from other horror films. It lets you have moments of beauty, and it lets you experience the whole spectrum of emotions that you would in any drama, on top of just being edge of your seat, uncomfortable, terrifying thriller. Like you were saying, the theme of family at any cost in the first one's really strong. They're trying to bring a fucking life into the world at the worst time, and they're still determined to do it. And that's still strong here. The family unit thing is very strong, and the way that the children try to carry on what they've taken away from their dad was really great. But I do think that the theme of this one seemed like it was maybe bravery. I don't know if it was as strong thematically as the first one, or if the emotional tension to me was as heightened. Unfortunately, I got the feeling that this was a little bit more slight of a film. The end was a great moment, but I was a little surprised when I found that that was where the movie's ending. I think maybe this film lacked a sort of surprise or a turn towards the last third that wouldn't have just made me say, oh yeah, that's kind of where I thought we were gonna go, and it happened, and it was well done. So I think there are some ways in which this sequel didn't deliver as strong as the first for me, but in other ways it delivers about as strong. The thriller elements here are really top notch. There are moments that are just as tense as the first film. They find some new environments to explore, and there are a lot of holy shit moments where you're like, how the hell are the characters gonna get out of this situation? A tricky thing to navigate about this film is that the monsters are just kind of out in broad daylight. We know exactly what they look like. We know exactly sort of how to defeat them from what they learned in the first film. And the first film did an amazing job of hiding the monsters, where we barely even knew what they looked like right up until the end. And so I think that mystery element of what it is that's chasing them made the first one a little bit more tense sometimes. But the second one in some ways has bigger, cooler action scenes because they were allowed to just kind of put the monsters out there. What actually might have been the biggest standout to me in the whole film is Polly Morgan's cinematography. I believe they shot this on film, and the entire piece looks amazing. The camera movement throughout is perfect. There's these beautiful push-ins on the characters at all the right moments, and especially the lighting in the last scene and the way that the shots were assembled between the scenes that were taking place. I think it's probably some of the best cinematography I will see all year, and I wouldn't mind if this got nominated for an Oscar. I don't think it really will. Another standout was the score. A lot of the really pivotal moments in the film are created around the music. especially at the ending. I've brought the ending up many times because I think it's like phenomenal filmmaking. But the score is able to like transform from being that really like creepy, like low cello horror suspense soundscape to really tugging on your heartstrings. And so on a level of craft, this movie was phenomenal. I might have even enjoyed the cinematography and the score a little more than the first film. And John Krasinski's game is absolutely there. Everything feels very carefully thought out in terms of like where the camera's placed and like when things are cut to. The editing's really great too. It's a really well-crafted film. The first film, as we know, was nominated for sound editing at the Oscars. And could the second film be nominated for sound at the Oscars? I think it will not happen. And it's partly because it's a sequel and they might just feel like it's less novel to nominate the sound. But it's also that this is just kind of a little bit more of an amplified movie, whereas the sound in the first one was like very like feet like crunching on leaves and like barely anything's happening and you're like really hyper aware of stuff. Everything is kind of, your sentences are a little bit more heightened in the first film because it's just a little bit more minimal. And so I agree. I think the sound is probably just as impressive this time around, but based on those two things, I think voters could just skip over it. And also, they didn't nominate the first for sound mixing. What? So overall, I think the film really delivers and is an extension of the first film as a really great, intense thriller. It did a great job fleshing out new characters. I couldn't help but to feel like the first film was more effective for me, but it's a more than worthy sequel. I would give it a 7 out of 10. I thought the film established A Quiet Place as a series that is just immaculately well crafted. We're seeing these incredible performances inside of a horror film, incredible score and cinematography. Like the first one's a very simple plot and a simple story, but just the fact that it delivers so well on those and gets you on like another level, I think, at the end. You know, I think I'm kind of in between like an 8 and a 9, but I'm gonna go up and just say this is a 9 out of 10. Oh, really? And I think I liked the first one a little more than you did. And then here you are. Like in the second one, yeah. I'm really pumped for the third one to give us like some juice. And then we'll have this amazing trilogy that you can watch like all together. And who's doing the third one? It's Jeff Nichols. Nichols. John Krasinski's Midnight Special, Mud, and Take Shelter. There's this kind of like vigilance and anxiety and paranoia that's like a little bit at the heart of this film. I think that it's in Jeff Nichols' work also. There's a lot of room to keep exploring this universe, but I'd be nervous that a third film could sort of wear off like reusing those same thriller elements that the first two did. But bringing a new director on board is a cool idea. Honestly though, I almost want like John Krasinski just to do it again. Yeah. I don't know why he's not. He did a fucking amazing job. Unless he's gonna do something different. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Where's your quiet place?